AM 600 KOGO, San Diego's news and talk station. Coming up at 6:50, we'll talk about legislation that has advanced to Governor Jerry Brown's desk in Sacramento that would ban a favorite tactic of the Escondido Police Department. We'll have details coming up. This segment, however, we want to focus on another huge development in Sacramento. On Thursday, Governor Jerry Brown convened a news conference with Assemblyman Nathan Fletcher, a San Diego Republican, and some other folks to unveil a job creation bill that he had worked out with Assemblyman Fletcher, under which several taxes would go down, including the personal income taxes, in return for ending a tax break that benefited corporations in a strange way, a really odd break. This was a huge breakthrough, and later on Thursday, the Assembly voted on a bipartisan in a bipartisan way to pass it. I'm pleased to be joined now by Assemblyman Fletcher. Can you tell us what's happened today to your bill in the state Senate? I guess today is the last day it has to pass, or else it's not going to pass for several months.
Yeah, we are still working really hard, trying to put together the votes to get what I think is just a common sense measure that'll give about $1 billion a year in permanent tax cuts to Californians by closing the loophole you described, Chris, which is pretty ridiculous and indefensible. But it's tough. It's a tough fight. We've got a lot of very powerful vested interests from out of state that are very engaged in this, and so we've literally been working. The last 48 hours almost nonstop, trying to put this together, and we're going to continue to push through the end of the session.
Now, I fully understand the idea that people are averse to raising taxes during a recession, but it's one thing to have that principle. It's another thing to invoke that principle in defending a bizarre practice that allows 13,000 corporations to decide if they're going to pay taxes in this state or in some other state.
Right.
Having that kind of a weird variability in the tax code doesn't make sense. This doesn't seem to me to be much of a close call at all. I was kind of disappointed that Senator Bob Dutton, who's been on the show many times, the Senate minority leader, took shots at this for being developed behind closed doors. It's quite similar to things that Assembly Republicans and Senate Republicans have been talking about for years.
Well, and it's identical to what Rick Perry did in Texas. It's identical to what Chris Christie did in New Jersey. It's identical to what Mitch Daniels did in Indiana, and what 20-something other governors have done around the state, to say we're going to have a tax policy that rewards those people who are in our state employing our people. And right now we have a tax policy where you choose. Do you want a system that benefits you because you're out of state, or do you want a system that benefits you because you're in state? And that's illogical, because we want to be a competitive place, and we want people to come here and grow their jobs. And so doing what all those Republican governors did, putting that in place in California will make us more competitive. It's the right thing to do. But then we take that increase and we provide real and permanent tax cuts to Californians who are struggling of about $1 billion a year. And it is, in a lot of ways, difficult to see the opposition to this. And this is not a new idea. I mean, this idea has been introduced as legislation last year, the year before. We've had hearings. It's been debated. It's been discussed, along with what the other 20-something states have done. And so it's not a new idea that was mysteriously cooked up. What was new was Governor Brown's willingness to offer permanent tax cuts to go along with the increase on the out-of-state companies, to make it a revenue neutral, and there's a clause in there to ensure revenue neutrality and to be able to adjust the numbers. But it's a tax reform measure that is closing this ridiculous loophole that only benefits out-of-state corporations, to give our people real tax relief. And so we're going to keep working. But these things are hard, Chris. Anytime you actually get to an agreement, it's always easier to say no. It's always easy to say, well, it's too little, or not enough, or it's too much of this or too much of that. And at the end of the day, Californians are struggling right now, and I think we need to be doing everything we can to pass good policies that'll help job creation, that'll reward those small businesses that are there and lower the burden. And so we're going to keep fighting this very, very hard, because people expect us to do our job and get something good done.
This is Top Story on AM 600 KOGO, San Diego's news and talk station. I'm Chris Reed. We're talking with Assemblyman Nathan Fletcher, who had a remarkable feat yesterday, teaming with Governor Jerry Brown on a bipartisan jobs creation bill. Now, I was amazed that it took this long, but finally we get through a bill that offers a tax credit for hiring workers. But I was also struck, almost flabbergasted, by the tone of Jerry Brown's remarks at the press conference announcing this yesterday. He essentially acknowledged a point that I think any honest person would have acknowledged a long time ago. See, CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, is an impediment to growth.
Right.
Not only is CEQA an impediment to growth, it's a fundamental source of power for labor unions and environmental groups in the state because they essentially tell folks all the time, green mail, you don't do what we want and give us money indirectly or directly some other way, we'll get in the way of this. There was a long essay published in the Building Trades Union magazine in 2003 that explained how they use this process to force Petco to a project labor agreement.
Right.
To have a Democratic governor in a state where the unions are so powerful admit that CEQA ain't remotely what it's supposed to be was pretty shocking, and I think could lead to some other concessions on some other policies that hurt job creation, or at least I hope so.
Well, and we're seeing some progress on that. We're actually seeing some CEQA reform legislation that's making its way through now to try and stop some of these abuses, get back to the original intent and not often how it's misapplied. But as I've talked to Governor Brown, he on a number of instances, I think his experience going back into a city and being a mayor and trying to get things done there and trying to revitalize areas in some ways shaped his thinking on a lot of these issues. And obviously I was there with him yesterday at the press conference where he took that question. And I was pleased with the answer. It's something I had heard in private, and to hear it reiterated publicly I think is a good thing. And you know, if you agree with someone's idea, it doesn't matter what party they are. And so when Governor Brown says things like that, or he's willing to work on tax reform, then I'll be happy to work with him. And then on some of these other things we disagree, then I'll be happy to point out the disagreement. But I think we really have an obligation on the job creation front, on the government reform part, on a lot of the things in terms of the way Sacramento operates, to make some changes. And I've talked about it on your show before, you know, that I've always been hopeful Governor Brown would do it, and I hope these types of things he's doing, like our tax reform proposal to lower the burden, like the CEQA reform, I hope he continues to do those types of things.
Now, a theme of your run for mayor has been your ability to bring people together to get things done, and certainly that was an impressive part of Chelsea's Law, which passed last year without a negative vote. But this just seems like a quantifiably different and more impressive accomplishment, at least if the Senate approves this, because this is something that's been log-jammed forever and ever. And so now you are a young guy, and you've got this relationship with Pete Wilson, 8-year governor, that led him to endorse you over people with more experience, and that Pete's known for a lot longer. And now you've got this productive relationship with Jerry Brown. Right. It's pretty remarkable. You know, you've got a good relationship with folks who were governor of California from 1974 to 1990. Kind of a unique thing. Do you ever step back and say, "Wow"?
Well, I think it all goes back to kind of, you know, why did you run? And if you ran to get stuff done, good stuff, you know, but if you ran to do that, then you got to reach out and build those relationships. You know, Tip O'Neill had a line. He said, all politics is local, but I actually think it is those personal relationships, and you build up that level of trust where you can sit down, you can negotiate in good faith, you can make an agreement, and you really can try and bring people together. And Chris, from the day I ran until now, that's been my focus, and that's been my goal. How do we tackle big, complicated issues that'll make a real and substantive difference? And then at times they're going to be controversial. This one certainly is, and there was a lot of opposition, but it's the right thing to do. And I think that people expect you to go and do that. And the substance of it has to be good. But that is the part of the job I enjoy, and that's a real reason I want to be mayor. I think there's a great opportunity for our city to have that same type of approach. What is a big problem that maybe people haven't been able to solve for years? Or maybe historically, like Chelsea's Law, it's, you know, never been able to get done. And how do we bring in a group of people and share the credit, but get them to buy in and actually drive a result and do something positive? And those are the parts of the job that I enjoy, and that's really what a mayor does. I mean, a mayor focuses a lot on that, solving these big problems, running a good city. And so I think our track record in a lot of ways demonstrates, you know, we have that ability, and that's certainly something I'm going to share during the course of the campaign.
We're talking with Assemblyman and mayoral candidate Nathan Fletcher. Well, you've been doing some press conferences with City Council President Tony Young, so you're building a good relationship with him. So It's just a matter of time before Tony comes around for comprehensive pension reform?
Well, we'll see. You don't agree on everything. The governor and I certainly don't. Governor Schwarzenegger and I didn't. Governor Wilson and I don't. But I've worked really well with the Council President Young on education issues. You know, I've worked well with Council Member Zaff on the Safe Box issue. I actually worked with Marty Emerald on some pedicab stuff, and I think, you know, one part of kind of my approach is we'll work together. When we disagree on an issue, we will disagree, and people should have passion. They should fight hard for what they believe in. but I'm not going to treat people with such personal disdain when I disagree on an issue that I forever sever our ability to work together on the next thing.
Well, good luck trying that out with Bob Filner. Thanks, Assemblyman. We've got to go. Thanks so much for your help.
Thanks, Chris.
I'm Chris Reed. This is Top Story on AM 600 KOGO, San Diego's news and talk station. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at KOGO.com.